this press conference, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Haji Mohammed Idris, FNIPR. The Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Your Excellency Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagodo, CON. The Honorable Minister of State Budget and Economic Planning, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite. The Executive Chairman, Nigerian Revenue Service, Dr. Zach Adedeji. The Host Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Finance, Mr. Raymond Omenka Omachi. The Permanent Secretary, Policy Support and Special Duties, Muhammad Sadusi Danjuma. Permanent Secretary, Budget and Economic Planning, Dr. Deborah Odo. The Director General, Debt Management Office, Patience Oniha. The DG Budget, Yakubu Tanimo Kurfi. The Statistician General of the Federation, Prince Semiu Adeyemi Adeniro. Director General, National Orientation Agency, Malam Larry Onilu. Heads of agencies and departments of government present at this press conference. Members of the fourth estate of the realm. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning to one and all, and welcome to this very important press conference on Nigeria's reform scorecard, the benefits, costs, and harms prevented. This press briefing is aimed at providing an opportunity to examine in clear and practical terms the progress of the ongoing economic reforms of the renewed hope agenda of our dear President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and what they mean for Nigerians. The media, as the watchdogs of the society, remains critical partners in ensuring transparency, accountability, and informed public discourse. So this press conference is designed to provide you with first-hand information, facts, and perspectives on the state of the economy, the gains recorded, the costs encountered, and most importantly, the great consequences that these reforms are intended to prevent or have already prevented. And so as we make progress, Your Excellencies, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press will have the opportunity to ask questions, seek clarification, and interrogate the issues directly. We therefore want to look forward to having an open, factual, and productive conversations. And we also want to plead to please, at the end of it, or when it's time for Q&A, you keep your questions strictly within the issues and subject matter of this press conference. We kindly ask that all interventions from the press will remain relevant to today's discussions as long as they are within the issues at hand. It is on that note that I'd like to, on behalf of the Honorable Minister and convener of this conference, welcome all of you. And of course, to most formally welcome us. Before I get to doing that, let me welcome the Accountant General of the Federation, who just strolled in a little while ago. I'd like you to please join me in welcoming the Accountant General of the Federation with a very resounding applause. We'd like to welcome Malam Babatunde Shamsuddin Ogunjimi. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. It is at this juncture that I consider it very expedient then to invite the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Malam Mohammed Idris, to please do us the honor of welcoming all of you most formally to this epoch event. Please, a warm round of applause for the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, MC. You've actually welcomed all of us and even provided the opening remarks. Thank you for what you've done. Our chief host, the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Mr. Tayo Oyedele, the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, His Excellency Distinguished Senator Abubakar Bagudu, CON, and the Honorable Minister of State, for Budget and Economic Planning, Dr. Doris Uzoka-Niete. Let me, because of time, cut down the protocol. It has already been led by the Master of Ceremony. All the Directors General and very senior government functionaries here, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to welcome you to this important press conference convened to provide Nigerians with a clear and factual information on the savings arising from the removal of the fuel subsidy. The decision to remove the fuel subsidy was undoubtedly one of the most significant and difficult economic reforms undertaken by this administration. We recognize that it has required sacrifices and adjustments from individuals, families, businesses, and communities across Nigeria. But the government has also been very clear from the outset that resources previously committed to subsidizing fuel consumption must be redirected towards investments that can deliver greater and more sustainable value to the Nigerian people. Today's press briefing, therefore, is an important part of keeping faith with Nigerians. As all of you know, citizens have a right to know the financial implications of major economic decisions taken on their behalf. They have a right to know what resources have been freed up, what these resources mean for the Federation, and how the benefits of these reforms are being translated into tangible improvements in their lives. This is fundamentally about transparency and accountability, and in keeping faith with the promise that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has made to Nigerians. The conversation around subsidy removal cannot end with the policy decision itself. Nigerians deserve to know what the reform has achieved, the resources that have accrued from it, and how these resources are supporting the broader objectives of economic renewal, infrastructure development, and indeed improved public welfare. The figures and details that we presented today will provide an important basis for that understanding. I therefore want to use this opportunity to commend the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, and indeed the entire economic management team, for this opportunity to place the facts before Nigerians and provide clarity on an issue that has understandably generated significant public interest. The administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu remains, as ever, committed and is also open to continuous engagement with Nigerians. Our responsibility is not merely to announce policies. It is also about explaining those policies and acknowledging the challenges associated with them. It is also about giving account of the outcomes of these policies and demonstrate how difficult decisions taken today are laying foundations for a stronger and more sustainable economy. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, this briefing is about facts. I will therefore not preempt what the detailed presentation of the Honorable Minister of Finance will reveal. The Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy will take us through the details of these savings arising from the removal of the fuel subsidy, what the figures represent, and their general implications for the economy and for the Nigerian people. I want to thank you, members of the Nigerian media, for always keeping faith with government whenever your attention is sought, so that we can continuously explain government programs and policies to you. What we require from you in turn is that you have the responsibility to relay this to Nigerians as accurately and as honestly, but also as patriotically as possible. We must know that this country is for all of us. The intention of every media professional must be to make sure that whatever government policies are being ventilated to the general public, it is not about tearing down, it is about building our nation. Of course, as the fourth estate of the realm, you have a great responsibility to critique government policies and programs. But in doing so, you must remember, as always, that we have a nation to keep. I want to thank you thus far for the kind of work that you have done as media professionals to keep Nigerians one and to keep it united. Let me, at this turn, say welcome to this press conference, and we look forward to a very robust and insightful discussion going forward. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much indeed, the Honourable Minister of Information and National Orientation, for that expose on what this is all about. Without much ado, it is then very pertinent at this juncture that we then hear from the man who has the figures to be able to address these issues at this press conference. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Minister of Finance and Coordinated Minister of the Nigerian Economy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Taiwo Oyetele for his presentation and keynote address. The Honourable Minister, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, let's have some energy in the room. We have a full house. The very distinguished honorable ministers here present, permanent secretaries, heads of agencies, directors, special advisors, distinguished members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us today. We invited you here today not to declare a victory, but to give an account. For the past 3 years, the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, DCFR, has embarked on major reforms to address age-long economic challenges. The removal of a fuel subsidy that was quietly bankrupting the country, and the unification of an exchange rate system that had become a source of arbitrage, distortion, and corruption rather than stability. Those decisions came at a real cost, and we are not here to pretend otherwise. Prices rose. The naira adjusted sharply. Households and businesses felt it, and many still do. What we want to do today is put the whole picture in front of you, the Nigerian people. What those reforms cost, what they delivered, and just as importantly, what they prevented. We're calling this the Nigeria's Reform Scorecard, and it is built to be read honestly, regardless of whether you agree with the reforms. So let me quickly tell you about the scorecard. What we're discussing today runs in 4 parts, and I will encourage you to read all 4 before you write a word. The first is a full account of how the resources were raised and spent. The second sets out, in plain terms, 10 ways these reforms have benefited average Nigerians and 10 harms they prevented. The third is the scorecard itself, 25 indicators comparing where we are with the reforms to where we would have been without them. This is what economists call counterfactual. And the fourth is an appendix with the underlying figures so that anyone, you, your editors, independent analysts, can check our arithmetic and our methodology rather than simply take our word for it. So I believe we have the slides up. Okay. Right. Let me tell you about the numbers. And these materials will be up on the Finance Ministry website as soon as we're done here. So you'll be able to download, do your analysis. So let me tell you about the numbers. Between June 2023 and December 2025, subsidy savings mobilized the sum of 15.8 trillion naira in resources for the Federation. Many people will say, where is the subsidy saving? As a matter of fact, there wasn't any alert to the Federation account with the description subsidy savings. So the subsidy savings showed up in form of higher collection by customs, because for every 1 naira or $1 of import duty before, at 460 naira, it became $1 at 1,004, 1,003, 1,005. The NRS, petroleum profit tax that they collected before, same dollar, higher amount in naira. So the savings showed up in the Federation accounts by way of higher revenue collections as a result of the reforms. Not just the subsidy removal, but also the exchange rate flotation, because we were subsidizing the exchange rate. And that subsidy was not going to the ordinary person or manufacturers. It was going to rent seekers. Out of these 15.8 trillion naira savings from June 2023 to December 2025, according to the Federation account, the share of the federal government was 5.4 trillion naira, while 10.4 trillion was shared to states and local governments. Okay. In addition, the federal government earned incremental independent revenue in the sum of 3.1 trillion naira, principally remittances from government-owned entities. Okay, in addition to the amount from FAC, the federal government is able to also earn surpluses from government agencies. So those amounts went up. while 11.9 trillion came from incremental borrowing. So people will say, you said you have exceeded your revenue, why are you still borrowing? And we'll come to that. So the additional borrowing that the federal government took for that period of time, June 23 to December 25, amounted to 11.9 trillion naira. A figure that would have been far higher and economically destabilizing without the fiscal space the reforms created. Okay, right. So, altogether, the federal government's incremental resources over the period, remember, subsidy savings, independent revenue, and incremental borrowing, came to 20.4 trillion naira. That money did not sit idle. It partly funded incremental expenses. Okay? For that same period, the incremental expenses of the federal government alone, not the federation, was 30.64 trillion naira. Of these, 9.39 trillion went to wage adjustments, minimum wage increases, and allowances for public servants. And I think this is a point that it should be of interest to everyone. The incremental amount that the federal government spent paying higher wages is more than the entire savings that the federal government earned from subsidy removal. Then we have 9.37 trillion that went to external debt service, made necessary by exchange rate depreciation. So if we were paying $1 million before in interest on our foreign debt, it is still the same $1 million, but instead of 460 naira, it's now 1415. That's more naira that we need to incur. And I've said this before, when you have debt service to pay, you don't negotiate, you don't delay, you pay. Because delay or default have consequences. And there's 6.5 trillion that went into strategic infrastructure, making the top 3 expenditure lines. Every naira of this is accounted for, and the breakdown is in the scorecard we are releasing today. So you find the breakdown. It is instructive that the single largest expenditure line, wage adjustments, at 9.39 trillion outstrip the federal government's entire saving from subsidy removal. This is evidence that the reform was never introduced for revenue purposes, but to address entrenched corruption in an artificially managed fuel subsidy and foreign exchange markets. Put another way, of the 20.4 trillion, 58% came from borrowing, 27% from subsidy savings, and 15% from other revenue, against total incremental spending of 30.64 trillion naira. 2/3 was funded by these new resources, while the remaining third, about 10 trillion naira, came from the existing revenue base, despite ending the excessive printing of naira. That in itself is evidence of improved public financial management. So a government that says we will no longer print money, they're spending more just on personnel costs than the savings from subsidy removal. And we're able to still find the balance from the existing revenue base. This is data showing us that public financial management has improved. Let me talk to you about our methodology, because I'm sure someone is wondering, where did they find these numbers? Before I turn to what these bought, what the reforms bought, and what it prevented, let me explain how we built this scorecard. The savings from subsidy removal and FS harmonization increased accretion to the Federation account through higher oil and non-oil receipts and reduced encumbrances on future revenue, because we are mortgaging our future revenue already just to pay for subsidy on current consumption. We established the level of revenue pre-reform, as well as the growth trend in the 3 to 5 years preceding the reform, and compared these to the revenue post-reform to determine the savings. Very simple logic. Okay. The scorecard itself comprises 25 indicators. So just on the slide that you have on the screen is a summary of how the money was spent. You see line by line with numbers how the money was spent. And this is how the money was funded. I already explained that. Both from incremental resources and existing revenue base. Right. So what else did we do? We analyzed the scorecard, like I told you, 25 of them, along 5 important thematic areas, as you see on the screen. The scorecard itself comprises 25 indicators across 5 areas of the economy, from fiscal sustainability to external stability, investment climate, social impact, growth and productivity, each set out in 3 columns. The first is our baseline, where we started from, where Nigeria stood in May 2023, the month before this administration took office. The second is our current position, where we are now, using the most recent verified data as of mid-2026. The third, and the one we often don't talk about, is where we would have been without the reforms. It's a no reform 2026 estimate, because many of us will oversimplify complex economic management issues by simply saying, what is the price of a tuber of yam today? How much was it in 2023? 1 liter of fuel. And we will conclude that the reform is not working for us, or they are even bad. We're saying there's an important comparison that we often don't avert our minds to. It's what would have been without those reforms. A recent projection of where those same indicators would have likely been today had the subsidy regime, the multiple exchange rates, and unchecked ways and means financing simply continued on their pre-2023 trajectory. That third column is not a guess pulled from the air. It is anchored in the trend already visible before the reforms began. The pace at which debt service was consuming experience when they delayed similar reforms. Every indicator then carries a plain language assessment, whether it's a major improvement, a structural change, or where a cost was paid, we are being honest, the price of stabilization. So you will see from this analysis, the indicators, where it's green means that progress is being recorded. When you see amber, it means work in progress. Good news is there's no red. And the data is there, you can verify, you can validate. Now, many people would ask, why are we throwing macro data all around. GDP is growing, inflation is coming down, and they say, how does that impact on the ordinary man or the average Nigerian? So we put this together as well. And you'll see that this reform is actually about the average Nigerian. Behind these figures are real, tangible changes in people's lives. Salaries and pensions paid on time, and long-standing pension arrears finally settled. Before the reform started, 27 states were struggling to pay salaries and pensions. A minimum wage more than doubled from 30,000 to 70,000. NEL Fund, now one of the most affordable student loan schemes globally, helping over 1.5 million students through school. In addition, there are cash transfers to millions of households, subsidized mortgages, agricultural support, strengthening food security, and a new tax act that exempts low-income earners and small businesses from tax, while simplifying a system that had overburdened the poor for decades. So the benefits to Nigerians are many. We decided to just share 10 of them. So when 27 states that were defaulting in paying salaries and pension no longer default, today that number is 0, number of states defaulting. They're paying Nigerians. They're not paying Americans or Europeans or foreigners. They're not paying the rich people. They're paying the average Nigerian who can now put food on the table. Many of us in the room will remember, some of us just want to pay $20 for a software to earn a living. We couldn't pay on our cards. Today, one of the banks sent me a note that they've increased the limit to $40,000. It's almost magical that this is happening in such a short period of time. Now, in addition to the benefits to the average Nigerian, we want to tell ourselves the harm that the reforms prevented, the counterfactual. It is harder to see what did not happen, but our scorecard puts numbers to it. In May 2023, 27 states could not reliably pay salaries. Today, that number is 0. On the pre-reform trajectory, our own estimate is that at least 30 states will be in that position by now, struggling to pay salaries. That's not a handful. That's the majority of the federation. The official exchange rate premium over the parallel market, once above 60%, is now under 5%. Left unaddressed, we project it will be above 150% today, with the Naira simply unavailable at any official rate for most Nigerians and businesses. We are running out of dollars. Our net external reserve was under 3 billion and we're owing over 7 billion. That's bankruptcy. And you know we can't print dollars because we are not the United States of America. What that means is, even to buy fuel, Nigerians will say, God forbid, you hold 3,000 naira and you will not find a liter, because there will be scarcity everywhere. Remember, we're importing refined products. Dangote refinery will not have been able to start because you can't sell at 200 naira per liter and queue up for government to pay the balance of over 1,000 naira per liter. The same government that was already spending nearly 100% of its revenue just to service debts and printing a lot of money. Just to imagine what could have been. Now, the legacy ways and means stock, which stood at 30 trillion as at that time, had been curtailed rather than left to double. If it had been left, it would have more than doubled today, as our estimate suggests. But we're being honest about the cost. We're not saying all of it is rosy. A scorecard that only lists wins It's not a scorecard, it's a campaign leaflet. And we did not come here to give you one. The monetary policy rate has risen from 18.5% to 26.5%. We record that plainly as a cause of stabilization. That's how we recorded it, not a hidden win. Petrol at the pump has risen from roughly 185 naira a litre to between 1,100 and 1,400. That is a major felt cost. And I will not stand here and tell you otherwise. What I will say is what the counterfactual shows. On the pre-reform parts, petrol will likely be simultaneously unavailable. It will still be 185 naira per litre. It will not be available at the official price. And it's likely to be trading in the black market for at least 3,000 naira per litre. That will be extra cost paid in scarcity as well as money, without nothing gained in return. And on food and household welfare, our assessment is candid. This remains work in progress. Food inflation has eased from 24.82% to 17.52% as of June 2026, just 2 days ago. The new numbers came out for July, and it has also eased further. But poverty and household welfare recovery is still classified in our own scorecard as unfinished business, not a victory lap. So where we stand today, the results are now visible in the data, not just in our arguments. Headline inflation has eased to 15.91% as of June this year, down from 22.41% as our May 2023 baseline. Gross foreign reserve stand at 52.5 billion, up from around 35 billion gross, while net reserves have moved from roughly 3 billion to 34.8 billion, a far more meaningful reserve or measure of our actual buffer. The stock market has grown from about 31 trillion naira to roughly 150 trillion naira in capitalization, creating hundreds of thousands of millionaires in the process. Real GDP growth has strengthened to 3.89% against a baseline of 2.31% and a no reform estimate that had us at best stagnant and at worst in recession by now. S&P Global upgraded our sovereign credit rating to B in May, our first upgrade in 14 years. Nigeria exceeded the FATF grey list in October last year and exceeded the European Union's anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism deficiency list in January 2026, restoring our standing in the global financial system. None of these means the work is finished or that every household is where it needs to be. It means the direction is right and the numbers, including the costs, back that up. So as I close, let me talk to you about what we see ahead of us. That's what I've titled Looking Ahead. This scorecard is a mid-course account, not the finish line. So let me share with you what comes next. We will stay the course of reform and accelerate how we translate the macro gains into meaningful impacts for every household. Implementation of Nigerian Tax Act will continue, with further fiscal reforms addressing challenges in our budgeting, reporting, and accountability system. Mr. President has been clear every single time that we need to improve our accountability, and that's part of why we're here today. We expect the tax to GDP ratio to keep climbing as the harmonized system takes hold. On prices, Our goal over the medium term is to keep pushing headline inflation towards single digits without ever going back to the distortionary subsidy that got us into this position in the first place. On investments, we intend to keep the exchange rate unified and predictable because predictability, more than any single incentive package, is what is now drawing capital back into our country. We will improve the quality and priority of spending in the most impactful area for our people. And on the areas this scorecard honestly marks as unfinished business, including poverty and household welfare, the next phase of our work is squarely about translating macroeconomic stability into relief that households actually feel. Expanding cash transfers to the most vulnerable, deepening agricultural interventions to bring food prices down further, and working with state and local government to ensure that shared prosperity is delivered from Abuja to every state and every ward in all of our 774 local government councils. Finally, a call to action. What do we want you to do? I will close with 3 simple asks. First, be a citizen. Support positive government policies. We cannot build our country by opposing every government action. Second, criticize government constructively. Misinformation, like anything else we amplify, shapes the reality we all end up living in. We actually pay a price for amplifying negativity about our country. And third, play your part. Seek facts and proper understanding, not populist views or sensational headlines. We are not here to pretend these reforms were painless. We're here to show you honestly and with the numbers what they cost, the benefit they delivered, and the harm that they prevented. We invite you to engage with the scorecard in good faith and with an open mind. The full data will be on the Federal Ministry of Finance website, www.finance.gov.ng. Visit it, question it, and ask for clarification where you need to. Together, let us build the Nigeria of our dreams. Thank you for your kind attention. May God bless you, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I think we can do better with that round of applause for the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Thank you, and thank you very much indeed. He has charged all of you, members of the press, and all citizens to be a citizen, criticize constructively, and play your part, which I'd also call being a patriotic Nigerian. Thank you so very much. Please, another resounding applause for him. Thank you very much. Now it is time for questions and answers. But I'd like to please again remind us to please keep our questions strictly within the issues and subject matter of the press conference. And we kindly ask that all your interventions will remain very relevant to today's discussions. And so we have roving mics. We're going to, with your kind permission, we'll be taking, in the first instance, we are taking 6 questions, 3 from here, 3 from that wing. And please, questions should be direct, concise, and no literature before asking questions. Please, a hand is up there at the red, where the roving mics. We have microphones. Please, can we get the mics? There's another one. Yes, please get the microphone to him. And when the microphone gets to you, do us the honor of just introducing yourself and the medium you represent and go straight to your question. Please, 1 minute only. 6 questions in all.
Hi, thank you. My name is Nduka Ojima. I work with Bloomberg News. My question, Minister, is connected to the government's borrowing plans. I mean, because you mentioned that briefly. I wanted to get details on the transaction with First Abu Dhabi Bank of Dubai, the total return swap. How much has been accessed so far? And if there are plans to access further funds this year? And because you've made accountability and transparency...
Can I bring you up to speed with something? Yeah. I pleaded with us to please keep our questions to the issues raised here.
It is connected. It's borrowing. He mentioned borrowing, so it's connected, sir. If you let me finish, please. Because you've made transparency and accountability, sir, a big deal. Are you committing to publishing the details of that particular transaction? Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, please, next question.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, good morning. Well done. My name is Basi Udo. I work for Media TrackNet Nigeria. I'm not here to contest the data that you've given, but I know that I have 3 children in the university. And I'm not aware they have called me to tell me that they have received any loan, NEL fund loan. And none of their classmates have even indicated so. So if we have 1.8 million graduates in Nigerian universities and my 3 children don't have it, who does? And when is mine coming? But the question I have to ask has to do with the trip that Mr. President made to the UK in March. And when he came back, he told us that Nigeria has secured a 746 million pounds financing deal for ports. Several months after, we are still unaware of the details of the terms of that deal. Some people are even questioning that that deal did not pass through any due process. People like the former Vice President of World Bank, Obi Ezekwesili, is asking for the cancellation of that contract because it appears to benefit British companies. Hold on, sir. British companies more than Nigerians. So please, sir, are you aware of the details of this deal? And what's your reaction about the call for the cancellation of the deal? Thank you, sir.
Next question, please. We've taken 2 from here, the very last from this wing, so we can move to the other wing. The third question, the hand is up there. Please bring the microphone over.
Okay, so I'm here. Honorable Minister, good afternoon. Onyemachuku here from Business Day. So just wanted to find out the spending cuts or efficiency measures that government itself has implemented, so that it doesn't seem like Nigerians are the only ones bearing this burden of reforms and all that. And then also wanted to know whether this burden is being shared equally between the citizens and, of course, government. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to this other column? There's a hand up there, a lady's hand. Okay. For the flower dress, yes, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chisom from News Central, and I have just 2 questions. One is, when someone gives a scorecard, how would you rate yourself out of 10? I would absolutely love to hear your rating. Then finally, you did mention that these monies that were dispersed, dispersed to the states and the local governments. So I just wanted to know, is there any specific, for the Federal Ministry of Finance dispersing these funds, is there any binding, maybe transparency or physical tracking mechanism that is in place or would be in place to make sure that as you are being transparent, making sure that these funds get to where they're going to get to, that it is also being utilized? Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. My name is Joshua Adams, and I report for Radio Nigeria. My question will be in the area of some MDS have complained about poor performance due to budget releases to some MDS, and some have almost also, even when during the National Assembly sessions, we've had MDS say they've not gotten releases. Why is this so? And then also, we've seen some contractors protesting that money have not been paid to them. Sir, if maybe we'll get more explanation on this. Thank you, sir.
Very last question. Very last question. Let's bring the microphone. Yes, please. Can you help us pass the microphone over to him, please?
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. My name is Dr. George from Boston Media.
Can we hear you, please? Can you speak up?
My question is, what evidence-based indicator should be included in Nigerians' reform scorecard to objectively measure the success or failure of government reforms? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're done with questions. We'll swing the microphones over this way for the Honorable Ministers to respond to. The Honorable Minister, sir.
Thank you all very much for those excellent questions. I know if we have more time, you have more questions to ask. So that's why when you get to the website, you see we put a nice place there for you to put your questions, and we promise to address them. So let me start with the first one. Once I'm done with my brief responses, I'll ask the Honorable Ministers if they want to add anything. The first one is from Duka from Bloomberg. It says, about government borrowing plan, and DGDMO is here as well. And particularly, he's interested in the transaction with the First Abu Dhabi Bank. Whether it has been assessed, whether we're going to publish the details of the transaction. Let me start by saying this. So you need to understand the transaction. There's always the textbook analysis, and there's the real life of what you're doing. So we're used to raising bonds on fixed interest rate terms. You say, I can tell you our Euro bond, for example, they were raised when the coupon was double digits. Today our yield is down to around 7.5%. We can't benefit from that lower yield on the existing portfolio because we issue it at fixed interest rates. This First Abu Dhabi Bank transaction is a flexible rate. It means if rate goes up, we pay more. If rates come down, we benefit more. There's nothing that says we must always do one thing. And the all-in rate for this transaction is lower than our existing portfolio. So the objective is to use it to refinance expensive debt so you can save money. And this loan was approved not only by FED, it was taken to the National Assembly. Because what some people are doing is they are comparing it with other countries where they did it under the table. What else can be more public than what you gave to the National Assembly? We've assessed it. Because one of the questions you asked, we're assessing it in phases. You don't want to take all the money at once. Because if you don't spend it at once, you incur costs on the extra amount you've taken. So this was structured very efficiently. We will not publish how we are spending it. We'll publish how we spend government money. There's nothing special about that loan. Nobody has asked us whether we're going to publish the money we took from the World Bank, whether we'll publish the one from Eurobond, whether we'll publish the one from Sukuk. Why is this not special? Just because some people decided they want to amplify nothing out of something. We're not going to be responding to those kind of sentiments. We are transparent. The information is available. In the next few days, you will see on the website, both the Ministry of Finance and DMO, they frequently ask questions about this particular debt or bond, just so everybody can please themselves. So I spent time on it because I think it's important. And the international media also, for some reason, have taken so much interest in it. But that is what it is. The second question is from Udo. And as you were asking that question, I was smiling. He said he has 3 children in school, and none of them has received nail phone. They are not even aware of any friend of theirs who has received it. something is just telling me in my mind that you need to ask your children to be honest with you. It is possible they've collected the money and they are collecting from you. If there's anything that everyone can attest to, it is this NEL fund. We've seen video of students randomly rejoicing because it's not only the tuition that was being paid, they get monthly stipend, interest-free in a high inflationary environment. It's like grants. 1.5 million. You can go to the website. In fact, what you can do, ask any of those your 3 children to give you their details. Help them apply. If you can't find the link, come to Ministry of Finance. We will help you. You will do it yourself. You apply for one of those 3 children and you get the amount. So you can go and ask them what they have been doing. Okay, so the Honorable Minister is saying we should even ask you whether they've shown you the evidence that they applied. You need to go and ask them. This is a very serious matter. You know, even in my personal capacity, I have one small foundation that I use to support indigent students to go to school. And many of them were still coming to me after NEFA and said, go and apply. I sent link to them. Within 2 weeks, they said we got alerts. You know, interestingly, the uptake is more in the north than in the south because we spend all our energy here doubting everything that government does. Okay, so anyway, I'll leave it at that. The other question Basi raised is with respect to the bilateral arrangements, visits by Mr. President to the UK, as part of which we had this deal about the port. And his question is interesting because he's wondering whether that passed through due process. The details are not made available. Yet, in the same breath, he said the benefit is more to the UK than Nigeria. Like, if you didn't see the details, how are you able to tell that it benefits UK? I'm just curious. I have this tendency to be curious. Interestingly, we still had a conversation on this just this morning, before this meeting. Again, there's nothing wrong in finding the person with money to help you solve a problem that you have in a way that that project is self-financing. Right? Imagine you take $1 billion to develop your port, and that port generates value of more than $1 billion. Why are we always antagonizing government policies? And you know, sometimes the reason why I put it this way is the way you ask the question can tell what's in your mind. You are not just asking questions, you are concluding. So from what I know, it's possible that some people know more than me, this is a win-win deal between the UK and Nigeria. So when the project starts, you will see it physically there in the port. Even the UK will not do audio arrangements. At least if you don't trust us enough, maybe you can trust the UK. Number 3, Onyeye from Business Day says, are there areas we're doing spending cuts and efficiency measures so that the burden of this reform is not borne by citizens alone? I want to address the second part of that question first. This whole presentation is to demonstrate to you that even the federal government earns less in savings than the amount we use to pay just one line personnel costs. So data does not support this narrative of only the people are carrying the burden. This is a reset for our country. Even at the state level, even though I'm not speaking for them, they also had to increase salaries. And incidentally, we just concluded FAC meeting yesterday. We're in Owerri for 2 days. And I told them about what we are doing today. And many of them said they will do the same thing. So we are trying to increase the level of transparency and accountability in our country, right? Encourage us. I know what's going to happen after today now is some people will take this data and turn it upside down for campaign. And you have to be honest with yourself. Are you trying to build your country or you are trying to tear it apart? So, the government is doing spending cuts, efficiency measures in different areas. This is the reason why the government was able to extract 10 trillion from the existing base to cover the extra spending coming from the reform reset. So, I know people will talk about the bulletproof vehicles, the private jet for the president, the vehicle, I don't know whether it's Escalade. And I only say to people, see, these things, when you want the applause of the people, you can say these things. But when you talk to a number person like me, it's a waste of time. It's like saying to a person whose salary has just been increased marginally, you say, why haven't you bought a house? Say it's because he usually once in a while, buy meat pie on the way to the office. You say, assuming you're not buying meat pie, how does that build a house? Right? And I don't think anybody is suggesting that Mr. President should go and enter business class and be struggling at the queue. Yeah, so let's focus on, I'm not saying those of us in public service should not lead by example. I'm saying let's focus more on where our energy will make the most impact. Part of your ability to hold government to account is having the right knowledge. If you don't, you're wasting your energy. I have an interesting analogy that I came up with, and I'll just tell you in 1 minute. This didn't happen in real life. So people were going to the ATM to withdraw money. Some people who have no knowledge of how it works, they say, why is government allowing some people withdraw money here and they're not giving to the rest of us? So some leaders emerged from their group. I said, this is not fair. Government has to, and then they went and destroyed the ATM, beat up some other people withdrawing money there, and they were hailing their hero. Yes, let everybody withdraw money from the ATM. They haven't put money in the bank. So after breaking the bank and the ATM and beating people up, they still can't collect money. Because that's not how the system works. If you don't understand how the system works, you waste energy. People went to the social media account of the World Bank to go and be abusing them that they're giving Nigeria loan. World Bank just switched off the comment. We've gotten the loan. Because that's not how the system works. I'll leave it at that. Number 4, Chisom from New Central says, how would I rate the government out of 10? You're asking me to do self-assessment. I'll give the government an easy 7 out of 10. And the reason why it's not more than 7 is because it is work in progress. We'll give you the final score when you see income levels rising faster than prices. When you see the middle class in their millions making money. When we see economic growth, at least 7%. When we see our GDP heading towards 1 trillion, then we do 10 over 10 because we don't want to be complacent. And you say, how are we tracking the resources to state and local government? In a federation, the federal government is one level of government. We're not the auditor, and but we work together. And like I said to you, they have also said they will do a similar thing. At the federal government level, particularly from the Ministry of Finance as part of our coordination role, we're developing framework for even local government. One of the aspirations we have is to have a portal, a central portal for Nigeria, where you can find all 774 local governments. You just go there, drop down, find your local government. You see their development plan that captures their role as listed in the Constitution, their annual budget, trying to implement that plan, and the audited account on an annual basis. And you know that would just be fantastic. Because this is where people feel the impact of government the most. So in summary, we're working together with the subnational to improve transparency. Joshua Adams from Radio Nigeria says, MDAs are complaining about poor performance of the budget, there's no budget releases, and contractors are protesting. That is half the story. We look at the numbers, and we can tell you there are releases to MDAs. We're not saying it's 100%, and many people don't remember that the budget has about 3 major components. It has recurrence, it has capital, it has debt service. You pay salaries every time. You pay overhead every time. You pay debt service every time. When you have a shortfall, you don't pay CAPEX and ignore salaries. The priority of public financial management is you deal with debt service first because it can bring down your country. You pay personnel costs and overhead so you can keep government running. And then the balance goes to capital. So whenever the money is not enough, naturally, it is capital that will suffer. And that is why Mr. President is very intentional to say we can't continue to allow capital to suffer. Because that's what you need to get the economy moving. And that's why you see the landmark infrastructure that Mr. President is investing in. Then, contractors, yes, contractors were protesting, and it's their right to protest. But you will notice that the protest has gone down. So what we've done is to prioritize contractors with small amounts. We looked at the reports, and there were thousands of local contractors who were owing. Some of them 20 million, 25 million, 30 million. Why you? We know money is not enough, but pay this 30, 40 million. We just cleared those small amounts. One payment, we paid 1,240. Just in the past couple of weeks, we also paid over 1,000. So that's why you're not seeing the protests anymore. At least the big guys who are owing billions, you can sit down with them and say, you know what, let's do promissory note, let's do this. They won't even come and protest, they are big men. When they are protesting, they write letters. And you won't see their letters. So it's work in progress. And as we enhance revenue mobilization for government, these things will get even better. The last one is from Rotimi George. I hope I got your name right. Who says, what evidence-based measure do we have and that we can include to determine success? That's all we just showed you today. If you have anything else in mind, let us know. We are measuring shared prosperity. We are measuring income level per capita. We are measuring jobs. We are measuring productivity. And this data, you'll find them on the Ministry of Finance website. We're not deceiving ourselves because to what end? We have only one country. When people leave this country and relocate abroad and they get a second passport, the system there will find a way to remind you every time. They ask questions like, where are you originally from? So remember, when you leave Nigeria, Nigeria doesn't leave you. Thank you very much.
Can come even louder than that for the Honorable Minister.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Ministers, and all members. Just on the Federation question, many people, and even some of the questions that are asked here reflect sometimes a narrow understanding of our constitutional federalism. Many countries in the world, very few countries in the world are federations like Nigeria. And Nigeria, for example, in Africa, I think we are one of 3. All others are unitary governments, where the central government collects revenue, where the central government allocates revenue to the different divisions or different units of government and decide how that revenue is going to be spent. Our constitutional federalism is different. We have a federal government, we have states and local governments, and the federal government, by that arrangement, does not decide where states and local government choose to spend their revenue. So they have the absolute right. But of course, like the Honorable Minister and Coordinating Minister of the Economy said, he publishes the allocations so that citizens can see. And there are many organizations, budget is very good at it in looking at what the 3 tiers of government. But again, what the coordinating minister did not amplify is that in addition to all that he said, federal government was deliberate in ensuring that all the claims and obligations by the states and nationals were being repaid as much as possible, to the extent that the fiscal condition of the states is much, much better. Many states have reported publicly, they have announced publicly quadrupling of revenues, which is a very significant achievement, because Mr. President, consistent with his belief in true federalism, does not believe in holding the revenue that increases, as was done before. In our national life, we once had excess crude accounts where the federal government appropriated additional revenues and held onto them and determined how they were used. But here, Mr. President decided that states and local government should have more revenue so that they can fund their activities. And of course, there are World Bank programs like SIPTAS that encourage auditing, that encourage publications. But this is where maybe citizens also need to pay more attention, that we should also put pressure on the other tiers of government to know what they are doing with the increased revenue that Mr. President is taking the bullet for, because he's bearing the brunt of the blame, but the benefits are for the federation, for both states and local governments as well. In fact, they are benefiting more because they don't have the kind of exchange rate influence debt obligation that the coordinating minister and Honorable Minister of Finance have. Thank you.
Bank. The minister has answered it very well. I just wanted to add as well, since we have a large audience, the frequently asked questions is going to come out. Let me just say that one of the reasons for that transaction is to diversify the sources of funding. Okay, so you know we do domestic borrowing, we do Eurobonds, we have loans from the World Banks and all of that, and they're usually in the media. So this is like diversifying your sources of funding, again, to get more favorable terms so that when you have a need is available. We negotiated a large amount, but we are not drawing all of it at the same time. It's in milestones. So please keep that in mind, that a critical objective of it is to diversify your sources of funding. And then adding that to the MPA transaction, let me be very clear, and I'm sure some of your colleagues here know this. For each of those loans, based on the provisions of the laws, the Fiscal Responsibility Act and the Debt Management Office Act, the terms and conditions are presented to the Federal Executive Council as well as the National Assembly. So it's not just a blanket approval. Approved. The detailed terms and conditions are presented. And as the minister said, I mean, the approvals by the National Assembly in the 2 chambers are plenary, so they are all over in the media. Everybody knows what has happened on that day. So there's full disclosure. Third point to add is, as these loans are drawn, so we have full approvals for them with the terms and conditions disclosed. As these loans are drawn, they'll be included in the public debt stock, so there's nothing secret or shady about it. Nigeria has always had the practice of debt transparency. So you will see it in the debt data when they're published quarterly. In June, for instance, you will clearly see the drawdown from FAB. So let's keep that in mind and not think we've done this new borrowing, so something is wrong. For the MPA, for instance, we all know how the condition of the ports are in Lagos, and that's a gateway into Nigeria. A major, Tinka and Apapa, those are major ports, gateway into Nigeria. I think if we are rehabilitating them, it is for the good of Nigeria, for commerce, for revenue, and for everything. We should put those into account when we're making comments on some borrowings, particularly when they're project tied like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Please, let's keep putting our hands together for the honorable ministers and, of course, the DGs for their very laudable contribution. We are coming very close to the end of his press conference, but before we bring it to a close, I'd like to invite the Honorable Minister, Budget and Economic Planning, His Excellency Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagodo CON, to give us his closing remarks. You know that his task is central to translating priorities of government into measurable programs and sustainable outcomes. The Honorable Minister, yes, sir, would like that you speak from here, sir, because of the cameras and the microphones that are already set to be able to relay what you say here. Please, can we welcome him to the microphone with a round of applause?
Thank you, my brother, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Satayo Oyedele, and the Honorable Minister of Information for both the introduction and the excellent presentation. And indeed, my sister, the Honorable Minister of State, Dr. Doris Uzoka, Aniti, Permanent Secretaries, Chairman, NRS, the young man who has shed a lot of weight in trying to get these results and contributing to these results, the DGDM, Accountant General, Director, GG Budget Office, and all distinguished participants. I believe we all have benefited from the excellent presentation, evidence-based by the Coordinating Minister of the Economy. But just to close by giving a context that I'm sure maybe will help in getting everyone here to either confirm the 70% mark or even more. Because Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaigned and got elected on a renewed hope agenda. And the three elements of that renewed hope agenda was that as at the time he was campaigning, we are not where we want to be as a country. We are still not yet there. We have, at that time, one of the world's lowest revenue to GDP ratio. Understandably, because of that, one of the world's lowest expenditure to GDP ratio. Of the 10 most populous countries in the world, we have the smallest GDP. We still do. We then have the smallest budget. We still do. Of the 10 most populous countries in the world, even with those that Brazil, for example, with whom we share almost about the same population, but yet their federal budget is at least 25 times ours. So, Mr. President was very clear that we have to confront that reality without blame game. Whoever does right, it doesn't matter, but how do we? And therefore, we have to take choices, bold, courageous, and in taking those choices, Mr. President learned from the very best of experiences about what other countries have done in the past. How do we sequence reforms? What do you prioritize when you are sequencing reforms? And Mr. President, understandably and courageously, first and foremost, let's stop the bleeding. Well, subsidies, foreign exchange subsidies, because these policies were not just limiting government revenue or even bankrupting us. They have led to a lack of confidence in the economy by those who hold capital. So those who own wealth are not enthusiastic about putting their money in our country. Secondly, Mr. President, how do we give confidence to those who believe in our economy? And I'll just on here, because this young man, Zach, has been in both. He was, despite his energy, his strength, which he shares with some of us, but one day he was paralyzed when he discovered that we have inherited over $6 billion of unpaid petroleum imports that we don't even have the foreign exchange. So actually NMPC was borrowing money to import. That's how ridiculous it was. And secondly, he was at the forefront when Mr. President decided that he want to demonstrate that he put his face with those who believe in Nigeria. So Mr. President approved a crude Naira for crude policy just to ensure that the Dangote refinery works. Just further demonstrating his commitment that those who believe in Nigeria will be supported by this administration. Equally, Mr. President decided that we have to get security right. We have to invest in food security. We have to invest in human capital development. We have to invest in an irreducible minimum of infrastructure despite all the challenges. So those, again, decide the priorities that Mr. President tasked. Why not being mindful of the need to support those who are otherwise affected by the reforms? So it is this approach that can provide context in how Mr. President, or rather how these reforms should be measured also. Today, as the Honorable Minister said, our revenue to GDP ratio is going up. Understandably, our both expenditure to GDP ratio we are not where we want to be. One of the questions, and it's reflected here, is many people thought, okay, if you and the Honorable Minister have spoken about it, if you remove subsidies, you should have enough revenue to do all. No. We were nowhere near we want to be, even with revenue, with subsidy withdrawal. That's why we have to continue to deepen reforms. That's why the Honorable Minister was calling on all of you to support us so that our revenue to GDP ratio will continue to improve, so that the confidence of capital holders, which again is showing in interest rates that are increasingly encouraging for those who are putting their money in Nigeria to achieve, to benefit, as well as numerous programs. Last but not the least is on equity. Mr. President, consistent with the Constitution, he was sworn in. Many people, again, need to know this, that our Constitution, Section 130A, says there shall be for the Federation a president. And the president is, among others, in Section 130, subsection 2, described as, among other three items, head of state, but chief executive officer of the Federation, as well as commander-in-chief. So, Mr. President, in addition to the constitutional obligation, has always been an ardent believer in true federalism, that we must make all units of government to function, to support them so that they can function better, but cooperatively and with support. That's why Mr. President attends meetings sometimes of the National Economic Council to encourage cooperation, to encourage irreducible minimum of spending in security, in infrastructure, in grassroots development, and also measures to boost our economic development. The choice of policies, the investment in infrastructure and security benefits all parts of Nigeria. Mr. President knows that interconnectedness can only be valuable if all those areas that need to be interconnected are connected. So, as we speak, this savings, this borrowing is being invested in projects across the 6 geopolitical zones, and they can only be for the betterment of our federation. So I hope I've provided more support to the numbers that our brilliant coordinating minister of the economy have provided. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We appreciate you. So, members of the press, as we bring this engagement to a close, the attention now and the responsibility now shifts from these auditorium, to your newsrooms, your platforms, and to your audiences. We expect that you do the very yeoman's job that you've always been doing. We thank you for the partnership. Thank you very much. We'll have the pledge. We'll take the pledge as we close, and then we'll have the group photograph. But I think we can start with the photograph. May I invite members of the head table to please rise as the pictures are taken very quickly, and then it will be followed with a pledge before we bring it to a formal close. Please let the conversations continue, and please share to Nigerians for their understanding the benefits, the cost, and harms prevented by this government with their very laudable economic reforms, despite all of the odds. Whilst they're standing, may we also join them in standing as we take the pledge. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend her unity and uphold her honor and glory. So help me God. Thank you very much for being part of this event. My name is Andy Gabriel. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.